Hello and welcome to the Daily Lawyer. Thank you so much for tuning in. Today is the start of our Careers in Law series. One of the biggest aims of the TDL platform is to present the law and the life of a lawyer in more realistic terms and not the Bollywood stereotype that we are all saddled with. And our Careers in the Law series is one step in this direction. So in this series, we invite experts from various fields of the law for them to talk about that particular specialization and what it means to be a lawyer in that space. And to kick off this series, I am super excited to announce our guest. She is one of the most brilliant lawyers I know. Actually, she's one of the most brilliant people I know. She's a partner at Dhaval Vussonji and Associates. She's a real estate law expert. And one of my dearest friends, Manisha Paranjpe. You can put your camera on now. And
hello, hi, Jana.
Hi.
Thank you so much for having me on this.
Yes,
and I'm looking forward to this.
Yes, I'm going to now read your super long bio, which I have tried to condense because you're so accomplished. So Manisha graduated from GLC in 2009. She was the merit lister at GLC, and then she's a gold medalist at the Solicitors exam, which is conducted by the Bombay Incorporated Law Society. She cleared in the first attempt all 6 papers. I told you she's brilliant. And she's been practicing real estate law for the last, I don't know, over a decade now. She's advised players on all sides of the table, whether it is real estate developers, so all of the big names, Pyramid Reality, I don't know, Shapoorji Pallonji, Lodha Group, everyone. And then NBFCs, banks, lenders, purchasers, investors. She also opines on various real estate issues. And recently she's been working with the government-backed stressed residential asset investment fund, which is Swami Investment. It's so long to say, but essentially Manisha has been around the block when it comes to real estate law. And I cannot think of a better person. I cannot think of somebody better than you to kick off this series on this topic. So Manisha, welcome to the Daily Lawyer.
Thank you so much. Thank you for all the kind words, and you really do make me sound very accomplished.
You are. I don't have to try hard. So Magic, you, like I said, you've been around the block in real estate issues. And recently she's been working with the government-backed stressed residential asset investment fund, which is Swami Investment. It's so long to say, but essentially Manisha has been around the block when it comes to real estate law. And I cannot think of a better person. I cannot think of somebody better than you to kick off this series on this topic. So Manisha, welcome to the Daily Lawyer.
Thank you so much. Thank you for all the kind words, and you really do make me sound very accomplished.
You are. I don't have to try hard. So Magic, why you became a lawyer?
When we first met in GLC.
How actually a lawyer? Why did you become a lawyer? Why did you choose to become a lawyer?
It's not a good answer. You're not going to make me sound so brilliant. I only did it because I hate maths, and I had taken science for my 11th, 12th, and the traditional options are, engineering and medicine. And I did very badly in the medicine entrance exam. So the only option left was engineering. But I knew that has a lot of physics and maths, and I have no interest. So I was just looking for something which didn't require any mathematics. And I thought incorrectly that law is the thing. I didn't know. I do a lot of calculations, unfortunately, now. But I didn't know it at that time. And I said, oh, wow, this sounds good. No maths, just English, deep. So I was happy. And that's the only reason why I did it at that time. And then, it's gone well.
Yeah, it's gone well. But what has been the journey from that point as a law student, or when you passed out to now as a partner, and how has that journey been like for someone who's starting out or who is a law student? How will you describe your journey?
So I think one very good thing about GLC is the fact that we get to start working really early when we are in college. Yeah. I think that's a great advantage that we have, and it's probably because we have no classes, so it's the only thing that we can really do to keep ourselves occupied. So I started working in my 3rd year. I used to work with Mohan Jaipur, who is a very accomplished litigator. So I was working in a litigation firm. And that's where I actually signed my articles, because he's also a solicitor and he used to have, so a lot of my co-workers there had signed articles. So at that age, you sort of do what everybody's doing,
Yeah.
right? And I knew I didn't, even though I was working in a litigation firm, it was not my cup of tea. I knew I didn't want to go to court and argue every day. It was not something that really excited me even then. And I never enjoyed moods, like, I was not very keen on that. So I signed my articles. Now, what an articleship is, it's like an internship, but it's more expensive in the sense that you do it for 3 years. So unlike short-term internships, which are maybe only for a month or 3 months, because this is a 3-year articleship, there is a lot of investment from both the sides. Even your master, because your senior scholar master in that, he knows that you're going to be around for 3 years, so he spends that much more time training you.
And because you also know you're going to be there for 3 years, you get to see matters end to end. I know in litigation, not many matters finish in 3 years even, but still you are involved, in depth for a longer span of time than you would in a shorter internship. And it also gives you become responsible for that matter. Unlike, you're an intern, you're there for a month, you're going to go. But when you're there long term for 3 years, it becomes your baby. They let you interact with clients, with counsel. So we used to, even when I was still a student, I used to regularly brief counsel, talk to clients, draft a lot of plaintiffs' affidavits. So that really got me into the groove of becoming a lawyer. So even when you're a student, even though we weren't really learning much in law school, there was a lot of hands-on experience. So I finished my articleship there. I knew I didn't want to continue there because it was a litigation firm. And although I totally enjoyed my time, I learned a lot. In fact, litigation, I would say, is the best place to start out, because the sort of, and you would know you do a lot of disputes. So the experience that you get doing litigation, you will never get anywhere else. So that was an excellent starting point for me. Then I took, to give these solicitors exam, you need to take a fairly long break to really study. You need to take about 6 to 8 months off, because you need to put in that sort of time and effort. So I took that break, and during that break, I was also sort of looking out, because I knew I didn't want to continue, doing litigation. And that's where I got a call from Kanga & Company, which is one of the oldest, solicitor firms in Bombay. And they're very good at real estate. So I was very lucky that, again, I think a lot of my life has just been luck. I had no real intention, okay, I want to do real estate. But that's where the opening was. It was not litigation. I was like, yes, that's what I want to do. And so after my assaults, before even my results came out, I joined Kanga & Company. And that's where I was. So where I work right now, Dhaval was a partner in Kanga & Company, and we moved out and started our own thing. So that's where the real estate journey started and has been continuing.
So Magic, you mentioned so much about articleship and solicitors, and there's so much curiosity among these a lot of law students about what is solicitors, because you don't have it all over India, right? You have it only in the like the old state of Bombay.
We have it in Goa.
Yeah,
that's right.
So that's Maharashtra, Goa, and Gujarat, is it?
So actually, I don't even know about Goa and Gujarat, but it's predominantly something that the Bombay law firms offer, because you need to sign up with a solicitor, and most of the solicitors are practicing, in Bombay. And as you mentioned, BILS, that is the Bombay Incorporated Law Society, is the organization that runs it. So that's in the High Court at Bombay. So as I said, you're right. There is not much. Not a lot of people in the rest of the country, let alone the rest of the world, know of this. Though I'm sure they're aware of what a solicitor is because of the British, barrister-solicitor system. But what it really is it's a very difficult exam. It has about 6 papers, different subjects. So you have a procedure like CPC, you have contract, you have corporate law like Companies Act, you have income tax, you have real estate, transfer of property, etc. And there's something called modern commercial, which is a mix of miscellaneous laws. And each of these papers, there is no fixed, especially coming from GLC, where you have a fixed paper pattern, you know what the papers are going to be like. This exam is slightly more different, because you don't know what sort of questions they ask. They ask a lot of practical problems, questions on recent judgments. So you need to be aware of not just the law, not just the Bare Act. You need to know your precedents. You need to read your case law. Just have general awareness. And there are drafting questions where you have to draft a clause, maybe in a sale deed or something like that, or draft a covenant, or maybe draft a plaint, some prayers in a plaint or something, which is application based. I don't think we ever had something like that in GLC at least. So also the passing criteria is difficult. You need to I've actually forgotten now what it was, but I think you need to get more than 50 in all. I've forgotten. You need to get more than 50, I think, in all 6 papers, but your aggregate should be more than 60 or something like that. It's very difficult, and I did it more than 10 years ago, so I don't really remember the details now. But what it does is, and why I thought it was super helpful for me to give that exam was, and again I come back to GLC because I mean that's been my only experience of being a law student, and at least at that time we didn't have regular lectures. It was just, as I said, we would go to work, come back, take study leave for 15 days, study, give our exams, and that's what GLC was for us. At least in the 3 years where the law subject started. The first 2 years we used to attend, but we didn't have any legal subjects. So, and when you're working, and although the good thing about working in litigation is you do read the law very often, but a lot of other practices, everyday general, I do a lot of banking and finance work now. A lot of times you're working on documents, you're negotiating, you're not really opening your bare act and reading it. That doesn't happen when you're practicing the law every day. And it didn't happen in GLC because we were just studying, for the exam, looking at the papers, whatever, reading chapwalas and doing all of that. But you remember that. The good thing about the solicitors was that I really had to study the law, not just the bare acts, not just commentaries, but also look up case law, see what was going on, practice my drafting, learn how things, how crisp your prayers have to be, make sure you cover, because if you miss a prayer, you're never going to get that relief because you simply didn't ask for it. So all these practical things, along with actually reading the law, was something, and you get to do it over a span of 6 months because that's time that you take off work and you choose to do this instead. And then give those exams. It also taught me how the various laws are actually interconnected, because you look at it, tax is something, what does that have to do with, say, transfer of property, or you don't look at it together. But when you're studying for that exam and when you're reading all these precedent and everything, you realize that there's a lot of interplay of different laws, which at that time, maybe today after 10 years, 12 years of practice, we know. But when you're a law student fresh out of law school, at least I hadn't realized that interplay and to what extent it really was. So that is something that, that I could at that time, what I would have otherwise learned in, say, 5-6 years, I was able to get that in a shorter period of time. And that really helped me, because when I started then working in Kanga, I was able to look at a matter more holistically, not just look at it from, okay, just transfer of sale deed, so I just think of the transfer of property. It was not like that. I would also think about income tax implications. I mean, now there's GST that we think about. At that time, it wasn't there. But you look at things differently. So that is something that really helps you if you give your solicitors.
And do you recommend that, students sign up with their article? Like, whom do you recommend should do it? Because I think now students are a lot more aware. When we were in college, we were like, okay, you're doing it, I'm doing it. We can go together. We can come back together.
But what's interesting is, a group of us were very close in college. We all ended up doing different things. Yeah. So I don't think any of us did the same thing. So even though we always thought, I should do that, I should do this, we did end up figuring our own ways out. So that did happen. See, I would say, as you said, I call them children now because I think that's what they are, right? I mean, to us. but I mean, law students now are much more aware, and there are more. I don't know if there are more options, but they are certainly aware of.
Yeah, of course, yeah.
So I think if you're planning on doing, say, a master's abroad immediately after your your LLB degree, then maybe this doesn't make a lot of sense, because so you can sign your articles only after your 3rd year of the 5-year course. So you need to do so in your 4th, 5th year and 1 year after you graduate. Yeah. And then you're eligible to give that exam in that same year, the end of the 3rd year. So you should have finished 3 years of articleship before you give this. And this exam it's held twice a year. I think in September, October, maybe October, November, and around April. So you need to have finished your 3 years before that. So if you are planning on anyway getting another degree, and you're not going to be here when you graduate, I don't know if it makes sense for you to then tie yourself down to doing this. You may want to, work on what could get you into a good foreign university, because I think that requires a more diverse sort of experience, right? So maybe for students who are more focused on that, this may not make a lot of sense. But if you are interested in working in India and you want to work in areas, and especially real estate, I find it very helpful to do. Even other like tax, corporate laws also, even litigation, because litigation, you would know, you need to be sort of an expert in all laws. It's not just one thing.
Litigation for sure.
Yeah, correct. So if you intend to continue to practice here, especially in Bombay, it does have a lot of value, especially because, so just to give my own example, if I get two CVs, and one is a solicitor and the other is not, I would be a little more inclined towards the person who is a solicitor, not because I think he's smarter or she's smarter or anything, just because I know that this person has gone through that much of studying, and it also requires a lot of self-discipline, because this is not like a college exam where, wo exam ka day hai to jana hi hai aapko. Nobody's behind you. You've not paid some huge tuition fee or anything that you have to give it. You can choose to simply not give it. So the only thing that pushes you to give it is yourself. So I know this person has some sort of, self-motivational qualities, disciplined. So as a solicitor, I would perhaps, give more weight to that CV. So if you're choosing to practice in Bombay, and Bombay has a lot of solicitors practicing, that may help you. Not to say that if you don't do it or if you don't clear it, it actually doesn't make a difference, but it gives you that little extra. And yes, I was fortunate enough to clear it in my first attempt, but most people don't, and that's okay. Even if I get a CV, somebody's cleared it in the sixth attempt, it shows a lot of persistence, because it's not easy to keep, taking time off work, giving it. So it does show a lot of persistence, and whether you do it in one attempt, 2, 3, 4, 5, it's still good enough at the end of the day.
And what do you think is the career trajectory of a solicitor? What are the avenues that a solicitor can work in? Just building up on your answer. What do you think is the career trajectory that, because I know you are doing real estate law, but we also know others in our batch who are doing different things. Some are doing core corporate work. Some have gone abroad and worked, so many things are there. So I think people have this idea that if you're a solicitor, then you're geographically limited to, either Bombay or whatever, which is why I'm asking this question.
So no, you're not. Why I mentioned Bombay is probably because it has more value in Bombay. As I said, even a lot of people in the whole country may not know of it. So it may not be something that somebody else will be aware of outside, but it certainly adds a lot of value to who you are as a lawyer and even as a person, because it gives you a lot of confidence, to clear that exam more than anything else. It really gives you that sense of, okay, if I can do this, I can do a lot of things in life. And as I said, it just increases your own knowledge, to just put it crudely. I definitely knew a lot more after 6 months of studying than I knew before that.
Do you think it makes you a better lawyer?
Yes, in some ways. I don't think you need to do it to become. I think there are so many people who are not solicitors who are excellent lawyers. So it's not a requisite. But yes, if you were to just look at yourself, if I were to look at myself before I was a solicitor and after that, definitely it would change. And there are many avenues of reaching there. And this is one of the avenues that is definitely useful.
And do you think that it gives you better, are you paid better than a non-solicitor? Is there a pay parity also that comes, or pay disparity that comes? Honestly, at the beginning or later at some point?
I think that really depends on where you apply or what firms you apply to. As I said, I think if the person you're applying to is a solicitor, that person will probably see the value of the exam having gone through it themselves. Yeah. I don't know if somebody who's not, and as you said, it's not a very unknown concept also, right? I would know what an LLM from Colombia, for example, means, even if I've not done it. I know the value it has. A lot of people who have not done it may not know of the value of it. Correct. So therefore, I don't know if you would necessarily get a better pay package from someone who's not gone through it. But yes, as I said, for someone who has given the exam, for that person, definitely a solicitor applicant would have some sort of an advantage over somebody who's not done it.
Okay. And now Magic, now coming back to what you're doing now, okay, like real estate law, for somebody who knows nothing about it, how are you going to what do you do? What is your role? What does a real estate lawyer do? So many things. Like
Okay.
you just have to say.
I'm sure. So to put it very simply, so real estate, obviously, is immovable property, right? So anything and everything relating to immovable property comes within the ambit of real estate, and it's not limited to only residential. I know a lot of it, at least for a common man, real estate is, like you mentioned, this Lodha and Chapuljan, you see their buildings and that's what you think about. But there are different, obviously, types of real estate, like commercial, and recently the logistics space is booming. A lot of warehousing transactions that are going on, and different like malls, hotels, all of that come within the umbrella of real estate. And what real estate is and what the practice of real estate is evolves over time. So say 10, 15 years ago, when maybe I started working, it was, or even like 100 years ago, if you see transfer of property, it talks about like 5-6 transfers, right? Like a sale, or a lease, exchange, mortgage, gift. These things have been around forever. These are simple concepts which are still very much around today. Or wills, when you bequeath your immovable property to somebody, that also comes within the scope of a real estate lawyer. You set up trusts where you settle property, onto the trust to be used in a particular manner. So all of this forms part of real estate. With new laws coming in and with new with new requirements, like I mentioned, warehousing, or hotels or malls or whatever it is, with new sort of avenues opening up, the transactions also change, right? So we do a lot of joint development, and we've been doing it now for the past, I would say, 20 years or so, where there's a landowner who gives us land for redevelopment or development to a developer. The society redevelopment, there's a lot of, Bombay is filled with slums, a lot of SRA work that is done all the time. All of that comes within the ambit of real estate. For a layperson, when you go to buy a flat, you need to go to a real estate lawyer. When you go to buy a flat, when you want to make a will, though will is not necessarily only for immovable property, but sometimes that is the most valuable asset a person has. So for all of these things, you go to a real estate lawyer. Also, you mentioned funds and investors earlier on. So it's not just developers or landowners or people who are buying and selling property, but all of that requires money, right? So when banks are lending, or when NBFCs funds are lending to real estate entities, they take security of the property or the assets. So we need to do diligence for all of that to make sure that the title is fine. So all of those documents, or when people are investing in the equity of a real estate company, all of that, though, that sometimes overlaps with corporate work. So a lot of times, like I mentioned, a joint development, if it's taking place through an SPV, so say the landowner and the developer forming a company or an LLP or whatever, that can be done by a corporate lawyer also, because finally the documentation is a corporate document. But and earlier on, that sort of separation was more, so a conveyancing lawyer would only do the more traditional conveyancing documents, and everything else would be done, say, by a corporate lawyer. But that's sort of merging now. So like in our firm, even though we are a real estate focused firm, we do it across practice areas. So we do corporate work, we do a lot of dispute resolution also, we do banking, and we do the more traditional conveyancing work also, along with title diligence, which is there in all of these things, right? Everybody needs to investigate the title of the property.
Yeah, but you need to tell people what is title diligence. I don't think most people understand what is title diligence.
So just to give a very simple example, if you're buying a plot of, say, I'm buying a plot of land from you, I need to make sure, one, that this is the plot of land that you're selling to me, and that you are the owner of it. There's no third person who's obviously interested in it, whether you have mortgaged it to somebody else, whether somebody is claiming rights in that property as a licensee, there's a right of way perhaps going through the property. I need to know all of that, because to give the example of the right of way, okay, suppose I'm buying it to build like a little farmhouse for myself or a house for myself, and the right of way, so right of way is somebody else's right to walk over your property to access something else, and that cuts across the middle of the land, and that runs with the land. It doesn't matter, you own it, I own it, you have to respect that right of way. I can't build a house if there's a road running in the middle of the property, right? So before you get into any such transaction, you need to do your due diligence on the title and on the development aspects. Now, obviously, the development aspect, a lawyer would not be the best person to guide you on that. Though, because of our experience, we are also often able to highlight red flags when it comes to development. Like, for example, the zoning would fall somewhere between technical and legal, or sometimes there are like recently, there's this flamingo sanctuary at Thane Airoli Creek. So there's a buffer zone around it where you can't develop. So all of that. So suppose there's a property which falls within that buffer zone, then we need to tell our client that there will be restrictions on development. So although the title may be okay, there may be restrictions on development. So knowing all that, then you do searches in the sub-registrar's office to make sure there's no document that is registered. You do litigation searches, you give public notices. So all of that is part of title diligence.
And sounds like so much work. Now, Magic, now what do you think? I mean, for a person who's listening, right, just a lay person, what would you think? Because you've done so much work across so many different sort of areas within the real estate space. What do you think are the most common mistakes that people are making? Just regular people are making. It can be anything when it comes to like even entering into a leave-in license, or like everyday issues, or some of the bigger clients that you've had. What do you think are the mistakes that you've seen people make in the course? I know it can't be one, right? You probably have a lot of things that you've seen.
Yeah, and a lot of people make different mistakes. So, but one common thing that I often say, and maybe you would have seen it, when you were working in-house, is that a lot of people see this whole legal and this lawyer ka chakkar and diligence and everything. They just see it as a cost more than anything else. They're like, "Isme to mera paisa ja raha hai, ye paisa bacha ke, I'd rather use it to, do up my house or something like that." And it ends up being penny wise, pound foolish, because, and I can understand when it's a huge amount of you're saving like crores. Yes, it makes business sense to do it. But when it's a question of maybe a few thousand or a lakh or something, it doesn't make sense to say not give a public notice or not do your searches. And a lot of times it's not the cost, it's often the time. You would know with bigger clients, they have all sorts of deadlines, quarter ending, and all sorts of deadlines, auspicious days. No, we have to close the deal today only. I can't let you give a public notice, which you can't wait for 15 days or something like that. It doesn't make sense because, and if everything goes well, it's fine. But if it doesn't go well and there is some litigation or there's some other person's right on it, you're going to be stuck fighting, and that's going to cost you a lot more time and money than what you saved. So that is something that I see people doing. It's sort of lessened now, but yeah, people still try to sort of cut corners when it comes to legal work, unfortunately. Relating to that also, a lot of times people get into transaction and exchange money without putting things down on paper. And they come to you after, money has changed hands. And it becomes sometimes very difficult for both parties to agree what their original understanding was, because, after the money's gone from my hands, I'm trying to say something, the other guy saying something else. It becomes very difficult then to, draft something which actually captures what their original understanding was. So I wish people involved lawyers at a more primary stage and didn't, sort of progress and then call lawyers in to solve the mess.
Do you also think this is because there's some kind of trust deficit when it comes to lawyers? Like you feel like they're going to take advantage of you, because that seems to be the general, like Bollywood has not only made us.
You're right.
Yeah.
You're right.
It's made us like these empty, like these real, like sharks or vultures. You're waiting to eat everybody's and not.
And this whole perception, and even when I was studying law, and I don't know if you got it, a lot of people think that lawyers are just people who fight. Like you like arguing, that's why you want to become a lawyer. And that's their impression, which is not true, right? I mean, lawyers are counsel. We're supposed to advise people. We're not here to fight. Even in dispute resolution, you're not fighting with each other, right? You're trying to resolve a dispute. That's why it's called dispute resolution, but that's not what people hear. So you're right. I mean, a layperson's perspective of a lawyer is not positive. They think either we're just going to scuttle the deal, like point 100 problems and say, nahi, ye to karna hi nahi hai. Or they think we're just trying to make a quick buck and making them spend money where it's not required. But that doesn't help us. I mean, we're not going to get anywhere if we just tell everybody to not do their deals, right?
Property, or they're entering to a leave-in license for a shop, or what are the things that you would advise that person to look at? Like what do you, because from what I understand, everything that you're saying is just risk mitigation, right? These are the risks because you're not doing all of these. And then you end up falling into a bigger problem later on. So if you have to just give them like 2-3 points or a few points just to tell them what are some of the things that you'll ask them to see?
Yeah, so when it comes to purchase of property, one very good thing is RERA that has come about in the last I think 5-6 years, and it's not 100% there. I think developers still find ways around it, but it has changed a lot of even to the common man. I mean, I'm surprised at how much people don't know about RERA. They will look at the property and say, "Iska main RERA pe jaake search karunga," and stuff like that. So that's amazing. There's a lot of information that is available now online. And the good thing about the social media and WhatsApp and everything is a lot of flat purchasers band together, and how there's safety in numbers, right? So at least in new projects, because of RERA coming in and because of flat purchasers sort of taking a collective stand, things have got better, I would say, for home buyers. Also, IBC has given home buyers status of financial creditors. So there is now some, there's a lot of confidence even in home buyers when they're buying under construction property. Though, of course, it comes with its own risks. So I think the risks when you're buying under construction, as opposed to risks when you're buying a secondary transfer, are very different. When you're buying under construction, the biggest risk, I mean, yes, title is a risk, but the bigger risk is that the developer runs out of funds somewhere and stops construction. That's actually the bigger risk. Because, and I'm not saying title is not a problem, but what courts also sees, here are thousands of flat purchasers who are innocent, who've put their life savings into it, bought this property. They're not, and there are home loan lenders, there are banks who have, have given construction finance. There are too many innocent, so as to speak, third parties, who is unlikely that the court will punish because of a title defect. So yes, if there is a problem with the title, most likely the developer will have to, monetarily compensate the person who's been wronged. But very unlikely that, all of you will be asked to move away and your building demolished. Very unlikely for that to happen. So for an under construction property, I would say, yes, title diligence you must do. But, look at the repute of the builder, look at his track record and see if he's finished his construction reasonably on time. I don't think a lot of them finish it on time, but reasonably on time. And you would have a look at their other projects, see their construction quality, etc. When you're buying from somebody who's not a developer, title becomes much more important, because what you're doing, and sorry, just to go back to the first one, you have your rights under RERA in that, right? Because that guy's a promoter, you're an allottee. So you have a forum which is made for you, where you can take your disputes. The Act, has a section that says the developer is always responsible for title, etc. So the law is sort of made for you in that sense. When you're doing a secondary transfer, however, that would be where, say, for example, I bought a flat from the builder and I'm staying in it, and then I transfer it onwards to you. Now, there I would say, and of course the building it may be under construction, it may be completed. Most often it's already completed. There, the risk of the developer is gone because the building is already there. Your risk on the title then becomes more relevant. And we have seen it in a lot of cases, a lot of times there are, family properties where, say, I have bought it, and for whatever reason, my brother's the guy who's living there, who's trying to sell it off. And there are people who come to me and I say, but the name on the share certificate is a completely different name. You're dealing with somebody else. So sometimes it's as basic as that, where maybe, I let my siblings stay and that person just tries to sell the flat. Or a lot of times, say I buy the flat and I die. Now I have two legal heirs. One of them tries to sell it without the other knowing, etc. So, or I have mortgaged the flat to somebody, I don't have my original documents lying with me. So things like that becomes very important to do your title diligence, especially when you're buying it from buying it as a secondary transfer.
So you recommend that they actually go to a lawyer and get a title diligence done?
Yes, you should. You should at least do give a public notice, do your SRO searches, which is your searches at the sub-registrar's office, which your lawyer can do for you. Inspect the original documents, make sure the documents are with that person, and also always go and check with the society, because a lot of times the society is aware of things that may not have been told to you, because their NOCs are required for mortgages, etc. So yeah, please, and especially real estate in Bombay is expensive, so people put in a lot of money in buying a home. So it's worth it to spend that much more money and just go to a lawyer and make sure it's done properly.
And what about leave-in license? Because I a lot of people don't know the difference between leave-in license and lease, first of all. So a lot of people are entering into like for, I'm taking a house on rent or whatever. And, so you want to talk a little bit about what is leave-in license and lease, and just.
This used to be a very popular question in our, I think,
in our exams.
Right? Yeah. What is the difference? So lease creates an interest. There was a table we used to make. So lease creates an interest in the property. A leave-in license is an easement. I'm guessing people would have some background on what an easement is. So easement is a right to maybe use the
basically just a permission to use and not
permission to use,
not
an interest.
Interest meaning that you can also like pass it on.
It's transferable. You're right. Transferable. One of the differences is that it's transferable and heritable.
Whereas
a leave-in license. As a leave-in license.
So what do you think? Like is like you said. You gave very practical points for home buyers, but what about renters? What about what are some of the things that, like, for example, I'll tell you, in my experience, people who've had a problem, especially when I was in-house and we were negotiating our office spaces and all of that, liquidated damages was one thing that I always had to fight for or fight against in my case, or security deposit, like, most people don't pay attention to that security deposit clause because many times the return of security deposit is not mentioned, or the fact that it has to be interest free, refundable, so stuff like that.
So I don't know why it's not mentioned, because it definitely should be mentioned. These are,
but it's amazing how many documents I've got which people have just taken off Google and just done cut, copy, paste, idhar se udhar, like regular people have done that, not even gone to a lawyer, and they've said, abhi sign karo. It's
so I think so I think that's what I mean when I say it's not sometimes worth it to cut those corners. You may be saving a little bit of money, but it's not worth it in the long run. So please go to a lawyer who specializes in and understand that specialization also is important nowadays, because I was just thinking, we have a friend who does aviation law, right? I have no idea. I don't even know the A of aviation law. So somebody came to me, I would be so lost, right? So go to a lawyer who has experience in what you need. And that's why I was so taken aback. Like, how would you not talk about the return of the security deposit? Because it's such a basic clause in a leave-in license. Right? So yes, you're right. A layperson is not expected to know that. So yes, definitely, please run it through a lawyer at least. You're on mute again.
Please don't Google and just like take random. Like, I think that's the first thing that we should tell everyone. Because
or you can Google and you can maybe make up your list of questions or some concerns that you have and ask them. This is what I do. How much I Google, unfortunately, and every time I take my kids to a doctor, I've already diagnosed their problem, and then I say, is it this? It's like, you Google this again. But please, I do end up going to a doctor. So you can do your basic homework. And actually, I'm not saying I encourage people to Google, but the fact that we have so much information available easily is a boon. So yes, if people want to use that, please go ahead and do it. But that's not intended to replace professional advice.
Of course.
That's not the intention. So please do take professional advice where it's required. And yes, a leave-in license and a lease, coming back to the original question. So, it's interesting in Bombay or in Maharashtra, or the leave-in license that you refer to, right? When you take a flat or an office space on rent, as we call it. We term it a leave-in license. In Delhi or Noida or Chennai, they do it as a lease. The same thing, it's called a lease. So although legally there are the table that I spoke about and the differences, legally that difference is there. It's practically used sort of interchangeably when it comes to taking a premise on rent for a short time period. Yes, in Bombay, the practice is to do it as a leave-in license. The difference also is in stamp duty. So that's one of the main reasons in Bombay why it is done separately, and why everybody does those leave-in licenses for 5 years, because after that it's as good as paying stamp duty on a lease. So why wouldn't you just do it instead? Right? So that becomes important, and a license is not required to be registered. Now, when I say this, I mean a general license. Now, under the Rent Control Act, a leave-in license is required to be registered. So, from what I've seen nowadays, most people are aware of that and do it. But there are still some people who are not aware of it. So it's important that you go and take that professional advice. And why most people do it is also because the burden of getting it registered is on the licensor. Now, as a licensor, what I'm doing is I'm giving up, in that sense, possession of my property. We call it charge and occupation and all of it. But finally, you're the one who's living in my flat. So I need to have those terms of your exit clearly written.
Yeah.
And because the law says that the responsibility of getting that registered is on me, that's the only reason why everybody goes and does it. Because otherwise, I stand to lose, right? Because you are registering my property, and then we're both fighting about what the terms of the exit are. So it's a good thing that's being done. But technically speaking, just a license does not require to be registered. It's only because of the Rent Control Act and the provisions thereunder, which is why we register it here. But yeah, there are people who like we're talking about the mistakes. So this is not as common. But some people compulsorily registerable document. I keep telling them it's your title which is going to be in question if you don't register it. They're like, but stamp duty is like 2 crores. Yeah, I can't afford it. And it's not worth it. It's really not worth it. I know it's a hit, but it's not worth fighting in court for years and for a lot more than that amount, later to resolve issues.
So then if we have to put all the mistakes together, I think the first one will be take legal advice and like take expert advice basically. So now, because, like just drawing down from that, who are the people who should come to you, Magic, as a lawyer? Like, who are the people who should take your services, or who comes to you? Like, who are your clients?
So I think, like you mentioned, so the firm I work with, we advise a lot of the bigger players. So not to say we don't advise an individual who wants to buy a flat, but that's not our usual. That's
not your mainstay.
So, yeah. So we advise a lot of the big developers. So also what we advise them on is when they are looking out for land to develop, they may just buy land, or normally most people do joint ventures or development agreements, just because you don't have to pay the full consideration upfront. If you buy the land, you have to pay the owner immediately, right? So we advise them on the title, on the documentation, on structuring, how to do that. As I said, we advise a lot of banks, funds who lend to these entities, because we can help with the title and again the documentation, the mortgages, etc., and investors who invest in this space. We also do, like I mentioned, sometimes there are hotel operating contracts, because hotels are obviously built by the real estate developers, and then these chains like Hyatt or Hilton or whatever will operate them. So those sort of contracts we often advise developers on. So that's the main focus, though we do a lot of other work, but yeah, real estate wise, that's our main client.
And what do you think now is lacking in today's legal system? Like, that's our last question for the law part.
I think people's confidence is lacking in the legal system. Like you mentioned,
I know.
Lawyers are not positively looked upon, and so yes, Bollywood definitely, or media or whatever we call it, is one reason for it. But I think we can't deny the fact that our courts are overburdened, and we just have a huge population and we don't have enough courts and enough judges. So there is obviously a lag in disposal of cases. And I mean, we would be the first people to say if you file a case, it's going to go on for years and it's going to take your time and your money and your sanity, because you're just going to be, it's not, nobody's happy, right, fighting a battle in court. So I think all of this has just led people to just have, they want nothing to do with lawyers, and that's very sad, because that's not what we are here for. We are to make a life easier, right? The point is to mitigate the chances of you going to court. So I think that's something that's unfortunately lacking.
So we are going to do this one step at a time. So with this platform,
yeah, I know. With one podcast at a time.
Yes, one podcast at a time, one step at a time. Okay, Magic, thank you for this lovely, informative session that we had on the real estate space. And now I really want to talk to you about something else. It's not law focused, but it's all about motherhood and the law. It's like I struggle. I know you struggle, and
I know.
But I think a lot of other people also struggle. We can speak to each other anytime, but then there are so many others, how, and we all manage in our own way, and we have learned from each other. So I want to talk to you about it so that we can learn, more people can learn from each other. So what do you do? How do you balance the demands of being a mom, because you're a wonderful mom, and being a full-time lawyer? Like really two full-time demanding jobs. How do you do it?
Yeah, and I think being a mother is just so much more difficult, than any other job, right? It's so much more physically and mentally demanding than anything else. I think, well, to be honest, I think the only reason why I'm able to balance it is because of the support system I have. I think if you don't have, people in your life who help you with, with this balance, I wouldn't say it's impossible. I'm sure a lot of women do it, but it would have been very difficult for me. So, my children are with my in-laws when I'm at work, and I think that's a huge. I cannot even put in words, how much that means to me and what a difference it's made to me, because I know they're well taken care of. I know they're loved, and I'm sure you agree. Grandparents are, I think, the best blessing, right, for a child.
Yeah.
So I've been very lucky. My in-laws are there. My parents are also close by. So I have a lot of support, within the family. I'm also very lucky that, and sometimes that's not enough, because you may have all the support on the home front, but your job or your career, the people there are not supportive, and you're constantly stressed, you're constantly, worn out. That's going to affect you at home also. So I've been very lucky that even at work, both Dhaval and Prachi, who are the managing partners here, have been super supportive. They also have young families of their own, so they're able to understand that there are times when your kid is sick and you have a meeting, but you can't leave, right? And they're very understanding, and that really helps to have so much support.
And how has motherhood influenced you as a lawyer? As in, has it influenced you? Like, being a mother has influenced you as a lawyer? We can agree that the other way is not.
Talk about that. I said, being a lawyer has made no difference to me as a mother. I think it would have been the same if I was anything else.
Yeah.
I think motherhood just changes you completely as a person. At least it's changed me completely. It changes your thinking, it changes your priorities, it changes everything. So I think naturally that would spill over to your profession or your job or your career also, right? Because what you could give in terms of time, I would say earlier, I can't give that in terms of time to my career. But I would still say I'm still as productive as I was before having children, because what I would do, say in 5 hours, and I really make sure I finish it in 3 hours. I don't waste any time. I don't chit chat. Though I do chit chat at times, but I try to, I put stricter deadlines on myself, because I know I have to be somewhere, and I know I'm needed elsewhere. So I make sure that I finish things somehow in a more productive fashion. It somehow just happens.
Mm-hmm.
I think you learn to prioritize better. You know what's more important. Yeah. I also learn to delegate a lot more, both at work and at home. I hate cooking.
Yeah,
that's I make sure I make sure that things that I don't think require me personally to do it, I make sure that's delegated to somebody else in both places. So that is something that I think I have learned along the way, because earlier, especially at work, if I could do it myself, I would just do it myself. I would spend 2 hours more in the office, stay back till 10 p.m. It makes no difference to me. But now I know if I have to leave at 6, the work still has to be done. I will give it to my junior and make sure I invest more time in them, because I need to train them to step up for me when required. I also think it makes you generally more empathetic towards other people. I always tell you, I don't think I was a very nice person before. Yeah, I don't think I was. I think you try to be kinder after you have children. I think you just see things a little differently.
Yeah, that's true. I don't agree with the first part of your sentence, but that's true. You become a little kinder to the world around us anyway. Magic, the last thing I wanted to ask you, which I think is really important, is the role of your partner or your spouse or whatever, in parenting. And not just when you have kids, but even before, because I think a lot of us end up having kids on autopilot, like, we finished 4 years of marriage.
It's the done thing to do, right? So yeah, let's have kids.
Yeah, we don't really think about, it's a overwhelmingly big responsibility that we've got. But we don't think of it that way. Society actually doesn't think of it that way. It's more like a checkbox, bas, abhi shadi ho gaya, abhi bacha ho gaya, like that. So how do you think, or what do you think is the role of a partner, especially for a working mom like yourself? And what do you think are the conversations you need to have before kids, after kids?
You definitely need to have a lot of conversations, because I think, somewhere, because I have a lot of extended family support in that sense, it's not been as difficult for me. But I can only imagine on in a nuclear family where it's just the husband, wife, and the children. I can't imagine the amount of pressure that a wife would have if the husband or the partner is not an equal parent, because and it's not just the physical. I understand when it's a newborn baby, the mother is more physically required, but it's also, as kids, especially as they grow up, there's a lot of mental load, right?
Yeah.
And I'm sure, this whole school thing, they have 100 things that you need to pack in their bags and do their projects and do all this. And somehow I'm the only one who knows what's going on. And I keep asking Asha, like, why don't you know she has this today? Like, why? Because you know it. So yeah. So you definitely need your partner to step up for you.
Yeah.
And whether you're working, yes, when you're working, I think it's more obvious to the world that your partner needs to step up. But even when you're not working, we know how I think just mentally exhausting it is to be a mom who's at home all the time, right? You need your own space. I think one thing that working moms do get is they get their space. That's why I'm doing this from office. There's nobody coming in here, no child climbing on me. So at least we get our space. But moms who are at home full day don't even get that. And you need that, otherwise you will lose your mind. So partners definitely need to step up. And you're right, society is not conditioned to think of a father or anybody other than the mother as a primary caregiver, just falls naturally. And we take it up also because that's how we have also been brought up. And maybe it does, I don't know if it comes naturally to me, so I do it because so yeah, but we do need to talk about it more, because especially when the mother is working, whether at home or outside, wherever, she does, the fathers or the partner is as important a parent to the child as the mother is. And you definitely, about the conversations, at least, yes, after the children, I'm always having conversations about how much my husband needs to step up. But, actually, before having a child, to be honest, I don't think even I realized how much work it would be.
Yeah.
Yes, we know the child is going to feed for hours and we know all of that. But just generally, how much of a shift in your life happens, after a child. And there are different phases, and some are easier, some are actually they're different. I wouldn't even say they're easier. Like now in the stage we are in, they don't need us physically as much, but they do mentally need us all the time. Like they're always, I'm sure they're going amma, all the time. So I don't think I had ever imagined it would be like this. I simply didn't know. So would I have had this conversation before having children? I don't know, but I don't think I knew what I was getting into.
But what about like your attitude towards parenting? Like those kind of conversations, because some people we know that there are two partners, they have totally different attitude.
But see, that's the thing. I didn't know what my attitude would be before I had children. So I know, we are fans of gentle parenting and attachment parenting. I knew nothing of that.
Yeah, actually, I never even heard of it.
Yeah, and I didn't know if it would be something that would appeal to me. I didn't honestly know. So even about attitudes of parenting, I honestly didn't know what my attitude would be. So I don't know if I would have been able to have a conversation.
Yeah, that's actually a good point.
About it.
Yeah.
So I think, but I think one conversation that prospective parents should have is, they need to be on the same page, at least on the broader, on the bigger things. And you have to be a team, because you can't do this on your own. You definitely shouldn't do this on your own. You will get a lot of, I'm sure all mothers you get a lot of advice, especially when it's your first child in the newborn phase. There'll be 100 people telling you 100 different things. And if your partner is not with you and is not on the same page as you, it can get
it gets really demotivating, I would say, for a mother, because she's already struggling with
and
the
I think then it's at that time that we make a real khichdi of our, already we don't know what we are doing, but at that time we really mess up. Okay, Magic, last segment. Okay, last segment, we call it 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. So I'm going to ask you five tips or 5 productivity tips, because you said you've become more productive. You are more productive and more efficient after being a mom. What are the 5 productivity tips or routines or things that you follow or that has helped you?
Okay, so I think
you can even talk about apps and stuff like that, which has helped you. Like other people will benefit.
Okay, so I don't have any apps. Okay, anyway, so I think what I already mentioned, I think I already mentioned 2 things. One is you prioritize what is important to you, and I think to do that, first you have to understand what is important to you. A lot of times you're just going with the flow, like you said, society has a pattern of things that you do, and we just end up following that. And I've realized that yes, my career is important to me. I love being financially independent. I like working, but it's not the most important thing in my life. Like, I know a lot of people, for them, the way they look at themselves is primarily as a lawyer. A lawyer is just one of the things in my life. It's not the thing. So that's something that I've realized, only after having kids. So I think you should know yourself and know what you want out of your life, then prioritize accordingly. Like I said, delegate, because that's the only way you're going to
accomplish more.
Yeah, whatever you need to do or whatever you want to do. Then I think you should, because this is something I do take breaks all the time, but then I feel guilty about doing it. Like, I wasted time. I watched Netflix. I didn't do this. I could have done that. I think you should not do that. I think take a break, enjoy taking the break, and don't give yourself, grief about it. Because that does help you when you take that break and you go back, you're definitely more productive than you're just trying to, finish the task which you've been on for hours. And I think the last thing, I don't know if it's really, yes, it's definitely helped me with my productivity. I would, I would get worked up, and this happens a lot over emails, professionally, especially when there are like email chains, and a lot of times tone doesn't come across in emails or messages, right? So somebody writes something, maybe they don't intend to be rude, but it sounds really rude, and I would get super worked up, and I would be like, I want to send a stinker back, and I want to do this. It's not worth it. Like, you should just pick your battles, and this is even not just professionally, even like we were speaking with, with whether it's your partner or your whoever's providing childcare when you're not around. You should just pick your battles, focus on the bigger things. Smaller things may go wrong here and there. You let go, and as long as your big items are checked off, you should, don't sweat the small stuff. Because I used to waste a lot of my time just stewing and being angry over stupid things that I could have used that time more productively. So that I think I'm finally learning to, let go of.
It's like really useful advice, Magic. All 5 of them are really useful advice. No, really. I mean, you learn this, like you said, over the course of few years, but but really good advice. Okay, 4 books that you recommend anyone to read, should read. Listen.
Okay, so I think one is, like, especially if law students are hearing this, I'm sure they've all already read To Kill a Mockingbird. It's very popular amongst lawyers, and I think everyone should read it. It really makes a difference. I think it changes the way you think. Another one that I really love is Catch-22. It's what? Why would you laugh? I love it. I think it's hilarious. I can't believe that somebody has written such a funny book on such a dark, morbid, and depressing topic, right? And it still comes through. His message just shines. You will laugh while reading the book. You will cry while reading the book. But when it's done, you know exactly what he wants to say.
And you think about it the most random times.
Yeah. So that's a book that I think everyone should read. You said 4, I wanted 2. Then because of the kids, I've been rereading a lot of our mythology, like Indian or Hindu mythology, like the Ramayana and short stories about Hanuman and Krishna and all of that. And I've realized that, when every time I read it, or maybe different ages when I read it, I have a very different perspective on those stories. And there's something different that I take out of it. Like, I've read it we've all read it, like, as children and as maybe as teenagers in Amar Chitra Katha, whatever. And then now, when you read it as a mother to your child, I think it's amazing that stories that are so old and really in a different time altogether still can resonate so much today. And you can still learn so many different things from it, depending on your own stage of life.
Yeah.
So, I think any of those, the Ramayana, Mahabharata, parts of that even. So yeah, have I got 4?
No.
Only 3.
Only 3.
Okay, the 4th one, this is slightly funny, but there's a book called Everywhere Babies. It's actually a board book for babies. I love it and I read it all the time. And I think everyone should read it. It's a picture book. So it's got like big pictures and hardly any words. But it basically talks about a journey of a baby from, birth to the age 1. And it says every day, and that's how the book is, every day, everywhere. It says babies are fed. And then there are pictures of babies being fed in different ways. There's a baby being bottle fed, somebody being breastfed, some baby, like, eating on his own, making a mess, some sibling feeding it, a grandparent feeding it. And then it says every day, everywhere, babies are carried in different ways in which somebody's holding in the arm, someone's got child on the shoulders, somebody's got a carrier, somebody's pushing a stroller. And I think the message that I take at least from it is that there are different ways of doing the same thing. And there's no one right way of doing it.
Yeah.
Everyone's doing their best. Everyone's doing whatever works for them. And it's all coming from a place of love and concern. And that really resonated with me, especially, going back to that, when we said we get advice from 1,000 people when you're a new mother, nobody's doing it. And I think nobody's doing it to stress you out or to make your life easy. They're doing it because they're concerned for you and your child. So that it really helped me at that time to read that book, because it sort of settled me down that there's no one right way of doing things. When people are telling you something, it's because they care for you. You don't have to listen to them. But don't get worked up just because someone is, putting a different point of view than what yours is. And strangely, it was that picture book about babies that taught me that.
That's a beautiful perspective that you've taken from that. I don't know whether I would have done the same thing, but I think it's a beautiful perspective and I'll remember it. Okay, now 3.
And I'll give you that book if you don't have it, because I really...
No, I actually don't. 3 tips.
Oh, okay.
3 tips for law students or young lawyers.
Okay, so lawyers. You just switched it up. I was talking about babies and other lawyers. I get so confused when you switch things up. I think for law students, I think, going back to what I said, the big advantage of GLC was being able to work while you're studying. If you're able to do that, and if you're able to try different things, because, once you graduate and you get into work life, you may not be able to switch from different practice areas, and it may not work also for you because then you want to gain expertise in a particular area. So when you're a law student, if you're able to get that sort of diverse experience, maybe do 6-month internships, because I don't think 1-month internship really give you a lot. So if you're able to do it, then please do it. Or if you can't work, at least maybe read different case law, maybe talk to lawyers of different who are practicing, like something that you are doing right now. Maybe if you can listen to things like that, so even before you start practicing, you have a general idea of what the different practice areas are and what appeals to you. So I think that would really help. That's one. You said 3. Second is, I think in this or maybe in any profession, but I wouldn't know about the others, but you need to put in the hours and you need to work hard. There is no shortcut. There's a lot I know that people speak about work-life balance, and it is undoubtedly important. But that doesn't mean that
stages basically of that.
Yeah, correct. So you need to put in the hours, especially when you're just starting out and you don't have a lot of if you don't have a lot of responsibilities, because as you grow up, you'll have kids and our parents get old, and we need to help out there also. So if you're at a stage where you don't have a lot of other responsibilities, please devote that time to your career, because you may not get that sort of, I would say, free time again.
Yeah.
And I think thirdly, I think as a lawyer, you need to read a lot, and not just read, not just say read for your exam or read for the matter on which you're working on. You just generally need to keep yourself updated and aware of what's going on. So I think that can only come from reading. So lawyers or law students should focus on that as well.
Okay, lovely. And then 2 life lessons you want to share with everyone. I think you've shared in bits and pieces through
two life lessons, and these are literal lessons because literally learned them. And I think I was telling you the other day that that's what I mean by I wasn't a nice person. I was so judgmental. Like, please stop being judgmental, because you don't know people's lives and you don't know their stories. And that's what I would just tell myself, like, stop judging people based on maybe your first impression or what they appear to be doing with their lives.
Or where they are now, where they are today.
Correct. So just stop. I think I'm not telling anyone that. It's more something that I tell myself. Like, just stop.
No, but it's a lesson that I think we all would do well to learn. And sometimes you learn it the hard way also, but it's better to keep in mind for sure.
Yeah, and that's what I mean by, you become a little kinder maybe after you have kids. I don't know what it is, but that's what or maybe it's just age. Like, when you're a teenager, it's generally like mean and angsty or whatever it was. But yeah. And the other thing is that, don't compare. And, they say, right, comparison is a thief of joy. And it's really true. And, and I think because of social media, it happens more because you can see Insta and all of that, where people are just putting they're on holiday and doing all these glamorous things, and you look at that and you
think they're winning all these lovely awards on LinkedIn, and you're thinking, oh my goodness, what's happening?
Yeah, or they're looking like so creative. You're like, oh, look at me, I'm sitting at home in my pajamas and I'm so whatever. And there are all these things, but it doesn't help you at all in any way, because I mean, first of all, their happiness is not your sadness. It doesn't take anything away from you. If anything, you should be happy for them.
Yeah.
And secondly, you are living your own life, right? You should just instead focus on what is important to you, and just focus on that instead of thinking, oh, I don't have that, or I should have had this. And if you want it, just work towards it. Don't grudge somebody else.
You should make that the tagline of this episode. If you want it, work towards it, because I'm sure that's pretty much what you've done in your life.
Oh, thank you.
Even though you say it's like a series of happy accidents and all of that, I don't know.
No, but I think I've been very fortunate, touch wood, in life. I think it's also important to have that in mind, that
of course,
not everything is your doing. So,
yeah. And what is the best advice, like the last one? Okay, one best piece of advice that you've ever received in your life so far.
So I don't know if I've received it, that somebody's told me, or I've just read it somewhere, but I think I've just, and maybe all this is the culmination of all the things, that I've said about prioritize and know yourself and everything. I think finally just do what makes you happy, even if it doesn't fall within, the general checklist that society has, or what your parents have, or what whoever has for yourself, or what everybody around you is doing. Just do what you want and what gives you peace at the end of the day, and you can sleep happy. Because if you do, and this is what I meant by saying that I realized after having kids that my career is not the main thing in my life, because, and I know you come under that pressure sometimes and I mean, frankly, in my life, academics has been the only thing I've been somewhat good at. So I've always had that, okay, if I studied well, I should, what's true? If I've studied well, I should, do well at work. And maybe I sort of put that pressure on myself, but I would not have been happy working like 15 hours a day and just going home and seeing my kids sleeping and not spending it. That would not have made me happy.
Yeah.
So I think means everybody needs to identify what works for them and what makes them tick. It doesn't have to be the same as everybody else, and identify that and just do that. And please keep yourself at the top of your own priority list, because a lot of us forget that. We're all trying to keep everybody else happy and please other people. But as it's a very famous mom saying, right? Like, you can't pour from an empty cup.
Yeah.
You can't take care of others if you don't take care of yourself. Yeah. So just do what keeps you and makes you happy. I think that's the best advice that I've gotten.
Yes, and I agree. I agree fully that is I don't know whether that's the best advice I have received, but I agree fully. And I think we are taking the steps to do that now in our lives.
Yes.
Okay, Magic, thank you so much for sparing this time.
Most welcome.
I know you need to go back to work. So thank you. We've had like this. I'm so happy to speak to you like this. And we had a great conversation. Thanks.
I'm so glad it went well. And I did burst out laughing like I started.
Yeah, made you put off your screen. Okay, bye, Magic. Have a nice day.
Bye. Thank you so much. Thank
Bye.
you. Bye. Bye.